Howdy, my name is Charlie. I want to tell you about my best friend. This man understood me better than anyone. He was always there and he never betrayed me. I was glad I had such a person like that in my life. It may seem strange to you, but I'm not talking about a boy that lives in my neighbourhood or someone I may have grown up with. My best friend is my own father. Since I was born, my father has never left me for long. He was the best dad ever. My mother loved me, but he loved me more. My mother told me that my father always tried to run home faster to carry me in his arms. He bathed me every day, read bedtime stories, and when I grew up, he took me with him on weekends to ride bicycles and ski. We spent a lot of time together, and my mother was proud that I had such a caring father. And I really did understand this, and I think it's why I grew up as such a confident child. As you know, there's nothing that strengthens the spirit and self-esteem as a parent's love and attention. My father and I had many interests in common. Sometimes we would give my mother a day off, and she would go about her business all day to salons and meet friends. My father and I would take care of the cooking and the cleaning and all of that. He told me that a real man does any job, and that family is mutual work and respect for each other. I loved him even more for that. One day, a friend of my father's came to visit us. He rarely visited because he worked as a sailor. This is an unusual profession, so I sat next to him and I listened for hours about his adventures at sea. Mr. Henry described everything colourfully, and I was fired up. I really wanted to try life on the water too. When he left, I started making paper boats and putting them on the water, but they all sank. That he would make a wooden one, so it would be light, strong, and keep afloat. He made it, and it was my favourite toy ever. I asked my father to teach me how to make boats, and then we spent a long time hanging out in the garage on weekends. I studied hard, and a lot. My father praised me and he was proud. 6 months later, we learned that competitions between young sailors were being held in the city. To do this, it was necessary to make a high-speed ship, to set the sails correctly, attach a mechanism so that you control it via a remote control. I was very happy, and I immediately informed my father. Dad then went online and started building our ship. It took about 2 months to work, and I was afraid that I wouldn't make it into the competition. But we did it. And even though my ship didn't look as nice or as big as some of the other guys, it was still really precious because we made it together with my best friend, my dad. My mother was proud of us, and my father said that we had this ship and it would always keep the memory of those days, our days. My dad also said that if I suddenly lose, it doesn't matter. There's something else that's really important. I said teamwork, and he smiled. That's right, son, we're a team, he said. It seemed to me that it would be like this for the rest of my life. That we would have many more competitions and adventures ahead of us. That we would build more than one ship together, and maybe even build a real one. Maybe we'll sail on it together and conquer the seas. How wrong I was. After the day I lost the competition, I was upset, of course. But I remembered my dad's words about team and teamwork, so I planned to participate again next year. However, I did not participate. It all happened as quickly as a flash. I woke up and realised that my dad was not at home. My mother sat at the kitchen drinking coffee and saying nothing. I asked questions about what happened. She only said that everything was fine. She said my father was away on business. I went to school and came back and waited for him. But it wasn't the third day or a week or even a month. He didn't come. I was beginning to worry. I asked my mum, but her answers were not very specific. Something was bothering me inside, deep inside. I knew something was wrong. I knew something had happened. Something terrible. But I couldn't figure out what. I came to the garage myself and tried to make some boats, but nothing worked out. I now had no team and no best friend. All the days became grey and boring. My mother came home from work tired, asked a few questions on how my day was at school, what was new. I answered her with the same standard phrases like everything is fine, nothing new. However, every night when I went to bed, I was attacked by the memories of my father. Can it be harmful to spend so much time with one person? Because then it's hard to part with the memories. Every object, room, or even the reflection in the mirror reminded me of those memories. Over time, I stopped asking questions, and I realised he wasn't coming back. 3 years passed. The ship racing competition was coming. I decided to go there, only as a spectator because I didn't have a ship. I went there without telling my mother. When it all started, I saw new models of ships, new guys. All the boys were with their dads, and I only stood alone among the crowd and looked at the people and watched the races. One ship reminded me of mine, and the memories came flooding back. The tears choked me, but I really tried to hold them back. This boat won. The winner was announced and I heard a familiar voice. Yes, we did it. We are a team. I could see a familiar silhouette among the crowd, and I ran closer, my heart pounding. It was him. He was standing behind a boy who was holding him around the neck and screaming in joy. It was their ship, similar to ours. I didn't know what I was doing. I just moved closer, and when they took the cup, my father froze. The boy ran to show it off to his mother, and we stood facing each other. I looked at him. I could not say a word. He was too silent. And then suddenly, "Son?" At that moment, my emotions burst out. "Son, you left us. You call me son. What team did you tell me about? Your new son. Is this temporary? Will you leave him like you left me? Tell me. You taught me values. Where is it all? Where?" Tears streamed down from his eyes. He stood there in silence. Then a woman came up to the boy, and she looked at me, and then at him. I could see the shame in my father's eyes, and I was seething with anger. I left, came home, and the first thing I did was ran into the garage. I started smashing everything, breaking everything. I broke our old ship. I broke all the pieces we had built together. I destroyed everything that reminded me of him. My mother came in at the sound. She was terrified. Tried to calm me down, but I yelled at her too. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? At least you know I have waited for him every day, looked out on the doorstep, checked my mail. I couldn't find a place for myself, and he was building another family at the same time." My mother tried to calm me down in tears, but nothing helped. And then she screamed that she was afraid. She didn't know how to say it. My mother said that my father drastically changed, became cold. She realized that he had someone, and then one day he packed up and left. Her, knowing how close we were, didn't dare tell me what had actually happened. "I didn't want you to think he's a traitor. He betrayed me, but..." And before she could finish, I interrupted her. "He never came to see me, or wish me happy birthday. He just pretended I was gone," I shouted, and then I began to cry. All in all, it was hard, probably harder than when he had left. It seemed to me that my world had collapsed again, only with a new force. I hated him and everything about the situation. When I calmed down, I cleaned the garage, threw out the garbage, did our work. Mother and I repainted it, and decided we would never talk about him again. It's better for me. My mother and I have started a new life. Many years have passed since then. I have already married myself. I have a son, and I'm devoted to him. I know I'll never leave him. You can separate from your spouse, but never your children. Do you think I was right? And what would you do in my place? Tell me, did you guys like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below.
Hello everyone, my name is Carl. I am a full 15 years old. My father is the president of a very large company in the United States. Our family is billionaires, but I work as a waiter. Do you want to know why? Now I'll tell you everything, and while you listen, watch and do not forget to immediately subscribe to this channel. Let's start with the fact that when I was born, we were poor. Yes, it is hard to believe. Now it is customary to think that if you are poor, you will never achieve anything. But my father is the best example of what it is possible to earn yourself, and he did it. When he and my mother got married, they had nothing. No place to live, no car. And the day came when it was necessary to pay the bills, including paying for the apartment. There was nothing. My mother had a little me. She could not go to work. Then my father, desperate, went out on the street and just went to shops and cafes, offering the services of a cleaner, a salesman, yes, anyone. He did not disdain work, and his mother respected him for it. That day he came back late at night, but managed to earn money, and although Dad was terribly tired, he always found time to play with me. So they lived for several years, until one day, Dad came as a cleaner in a large company. He was mopping the floors after the directors' meeting. One of the men kicked Dad's mop and called him a laborer. My father was a proud man, but with a brain. He could have hit him hard, but he knew he had a family to feed, so he straightened up and said something to the man that the others didn't even comment on. Dad told that man that the project they were working on would fail just because its concept was built wrong. They were going to build houses for the poor and sell them. Dad himself lived in such conditions and knew perfectly well what amenities were really needed. The guy just laughed and said he wasn't going to listen to the janitor's opinion. The idea of the project is beautiful, Gillies, that it is led by a person who does not understand and is not educated, my father said. He turned on Dad. He was hurt in front of his supervisor, and that offended him the most. Then the most important director intervened. He reassured his subordinate, then turned to his father. He asked him a couple of questions, and Dad answered. He just said his opinion and gave a couple of free tips. The director asked why my father worked as a cleaner if he was good at business. Then Dad said that a real businessman does not disdain any dirty work. It's hard to believe, but my father was put on probation after the dialogue. That subordinate was angry. He was furious. The very next day, my father came to train. He immediately showed himself. The internship lasted 3 long months, but it was paid. This money was enough for a living. After a while, Dad was hired for a long and hard work. It was a holiday for our family. Over the years, my father rose higher and higher. I grew up, we already bought our own house, 2 cars, and my mother gave birth to another daughter, my sister. And then we just got rich, until my father started running the company himself, which he came to as a cleaner. Despite the money, connections, and position, Mariana and I, my little sister, were brought up simply, without being tied to money. If you need money, go to work, Dad would say. Of course, we didn't need anything. We ate, we went to great schools, we had everything. But if I needed my own money, my father sent me to work. So in the summer, I worked part-time with neighbors, and then with this money, my friends and I went camping or went to parties. It didn't bother me that I was working. However, many people around were outraged and considered my father's upbringing ruthless. He asked them to mind their own business. I didn't like working at first. At first, I just wanted to ask my mother for money. She gave it to me secretly until my father noticed. He strictly forbade spoiling Mariana and me, and my little sister was offended with my father, and so was I. And once he came home earlier than usual, he sat me down at the table and said that there was an important conversation. Dad then explained that he could no longer support us and that everything we had would have to be sold. My mother almost had a heart attack. She was very worried and only asked what to do now. My father replied that now it was time for me to help him. I also had to earn money. That day I could hardly sleep because I could not believe that we were now poor. I suddenly remembered again that feeling when every cent counts, when it is necessary to save everything, wait for wages, and sometimes go to bed hungry. I felt sick. I saw my mother's condition and felt sorry for her. And now we had Mariana, who had never understood what it meant to sleep on the floor in cheap apartments. I pulled myself together and made a plan of action. I understood that since I was a man, I had to take care of my family. My father did everything he could. I came to school, sat out classes, and then quickly ran to a cafe near the house and got a part-time job there. The receptionist was surprised. He didn't understand why I was working. I didn't want to explain for a long time. I just said that we needed money. He accepted me with no work experience and started the same day. It was hard. That night I came home exhausted, tired, and hungry. I ate quickly, did my homework, and went to bed. The next day, I was back at work after school. So 2 months have passed. I gave my entire salary to my parents and kept a small part for myself. My father and mother were proud of me, and I knew I was doing the right thing. Christmas was coming. I studied well, and so I finished my studies before the winter break with good results. Christmas morning began with unexpected surprises. Mom and Dad came into my room and handed me a gift box. There were car keys. I did not immediately understand what this means, and Dad said, "You deserve a gift. Now I see that you are my son and a worthy man." I didn't know what was going on. Then my parents took me outside, where a car was waiting for me. In all the excitement, I almost choked. I bombarded my parents with questions about where the money came from, and when we went home, Dad admitted that he had invented the bankruptcy situation. I wondered why, and then my father said his favorite phrase, "A real businessman does not disdain dirty work." At that moment, I was filled with a sense of joy and pride in myself at the same time. I didn't let the family down. It was important. I accepted the gift, and my father said that I could quit my job for the duration of my studies. But I was so used to making money that I said I'd work for a while. Another year has passed since then. I still work in that cafe as a waiter, and I like my job. People around me no longer laugh at me. They show respect. Now I go to work by car, and I divide my salary for the needs of my home and family. I think I'm doing everything right. What do you think? Write your opinion in the comments, and do not forget to put likes.